right, guys, welcome back to another daily news video. Gamescom. It's been awesome for getting information about Starfield, about the direction of Xbox. We'll talk about it all in today's video, but let's start off here with some Starfield news. We got a bunch of answers to questions that I think people had, questions I had, and the game itself. The more information that is coming out, the more we're seeing about Starfield leading up to its release, which is literally right around the corner for the early release on September 1st. Can't wait to get my hands on it. We got a bunch of interesting stuff here. Some cool stuff that is going to talk about the longevity of this game. This game is going to last forever. And here are some more facts that we heard straight from Pete Hines. So first of all, they talk about the main quests and that there's New Game Plus, and that they say the game doesn't really start until after the main quest. There's so much exploration. You can spend hours not doing any of the quests and still have a lot of fun in this game. But I guess with the New Game Plus and the exploration and everything that goes on within Starfield, the game really opens up, expands, and starts after the main quest. So it's not something that you're going to be playing through and then just when you're done the main story, stop playing. At least for most people, that's probably not going to be the case. He says here that he describes how he got stuck in a vacuum of space after jumping onto an enemy ship and the pilot taking off. So that's super cool. That's going to be able to happen. Modders. We already have information about what the modders are going to be able to. They're going to be able to create planets and build stuff on those planets. And I think we're going to see some crazy special planets. Lots of crossovers. We'll probably see maybe like a Halo planet. Who knows what else is out there? Like a Fallout planet. Bethesda crossover, Xbox crossover, probably crossover from other IPs. Like, I think it will be super cool what modders are going to be able to. As we know with Bethesda and mods, we've seen just how amazing some of these modders are in terms of bringing content to games and upgrading games graphically, all that type of stuff. So it's pretty cool that we will be able to see that. It says New Game Plus relates directly to the main story, so Pete Hines couldn't really talk about it. However, he does state it is different from most New Game Plus mechanics, and it is rather special, whatever that means, but exciting. Says he felt like Iron Man at one stage due to the diversity of weapon mods being combined with skills. That's what I'm extremely excited to see, just how deep the modification is with the different skills out there and how you're going to be able to modify your weapons, modify your skills, put these things together, and then have different styles of combat and different styles of playthrough. We saw on that big 45-minute video the different styles of going about missions, like the guy who was one-punching everybody, the guy who was running and blazing, all that type of stuff. It says there's a museum on New Atlantis which explains the lore for the game. There's an enormous amount of creatures, no clue how many. It says after 150 hours, he isn't even close to 100%ing the game. There will be lots of mod support post-launch. Mission boards can ask you to build outposts on planets. There will be plenty of Easter eggs. And we already saw that one of them with the Adoring Fan that is back here in Starfield. There will be no level cap, he thinks. And he says that people on PC who have played the game early have said performance is smooth. So, I mean, this is a ton of information drop that we have for this game, answering questions here as to what we can expect going forward. I can't wait. Is just the game is sounding like one of those games you could really only have been dreaming of, and now we're finally getting to that point where we are going to have this insane massive RPG where the world is there for you to create, essentially you to live in and kind of make it your own. And that's extremely exciting. We've seen other stuff like this. I mean, Bethesda games have always been about that, creating your own paths, different choices, different narrative options, all that type of stuff. But this one seems like it's going to be bigger and better than maybe any of them from the past. I mean, we can't fully say that until we've played it, or at least I can't fully say that until I've played it, but I am looking very much forward to diving deep into this. Now let's jump over here. As we know, Nvidia GeForce now is getting Xbox games into their service, and they have started here with 25 games. They've dropped in there, and you can actually go ahead and try out Nvidia GeForce Now with these Xbox games right now if you have that service. Here are some of the games joining the cloud this week. And in terms of the Xbox ones, you got the Age of Empires Definitive Edition, Age of Empires 3 Definitive Edition, Age of Empires 4 Anniversary Edition, Crusader Kings 3, Dead Cells, Deathloop, Doom 2016, Gears 5, Grounded, Mountain Blade 2, Bannerlord, No Man's Sky, Pentiment, Quake, Shadowrun, Dragonfall, Director's Cut, Stellaris, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Valheim, Warhammer 40,000 Darktide, Wolfenstein Youngblood, and Wolfenstein 2 The New Colossus. So those are all games that have joined Nvidia GeForce Now this week, and they are all directly from Xbox, from their Xbox Game Pass PC, that you're going to be able to jump right in and stream them from that service, which is super cool. It just gives people more options on, I guess, where they want to play these games. And this has all to do with that new deal that Xbox did make with Nvidia, with bringing more of the Xbox games over to Nvidia GeForce Now, obviously because of the Activision Blizzard catalog and the Activision Blizzard acquisition, I should say, where they had to make some of those concessions with cloud. And this isn't something that I think Xbox cares even at all. This is good for them to get more people jumping into games via the Xbox ecosystem on other streaming platforms. It's just a no-brainer, especially from a business perspective. Now, Phil Spencer had an interview with Eurogamer. He went over a ton of stuff and really gives us insight into where Xbox is going, what they are thinking, answers questions that I think a lot of people have so far in terms of what's going on with the consoles. Is there going to be a mid-generation refresh? Are they going to stop supporting the Xbox Series S at some point? All of that type of stuff. And he answers all of these questions. So let's talk about some of them. So first of all, with the Xbox Series S, he says he doesn't see a world where Xbox Series S has to miss out on some games. Specifically, this is what he says. He says, on the S, specifically, we designed the box with similarities to X and clear places where we're targeting a different performance. And we're taking feedback from devs, including Larry, and I met with them today to talk about it, and I'm confident we're going to find a good solution and we're going to learn. I don't see a world where we drop the S. In terms of parity, I don't think you've heard from us or Larian that this was about parity. I think that's more the community. That's more what the community is talking about. And specifically when it comes to Larian and Baldur's Gate 3, we have heard that it is because of the parity stuff in there, having to release the same game across all the platforms. I mean, Larian has essentially come out and said that they have to get the split screen co-op on the Xbox Series S, and they're having trouble doing that because they didn't have resources. They didn't dedicate resources to developing and optimizing it for the Xbox Series S. But Phil Spencer is saying here that there are features that ship on the X today that do not ship on the S, even from our own games, like ray tracing that works on the X. It's not on S in certain games. So for an S customer, they spent roughly half what the X customer bought. They understand that it is not going to run the same way. So there you go. I mean, I guess there is no specific parity clause between the X and the S. This entire choice with Baldur's Gate 3 is Larian coming out there wanting to make co-op something that everybody experiences the exact same way, no matter what platform they're on. But we do have an update on that story. I will jump into that right after I read the rest of this quote. He says, I want to make sure games are available on both. That's our job as a platform holder, and we're committed to that with our partners. And I think we're going to get there with Larian. So I'm not overly worried about that, but we've learned some stuff through it. Having an entry level price point for a console sub 300 is a good thing for the industry. I think it's important. The Switch has been able to do that in terms of kind of the traditional plug into my television consoles. I think it's important, so we're committed. So the S isn't going to be abandoned anytime soon. I know people are hoping and praying that it will be, or at least some people are. They literally would just release a 1 terabyte version, a black version of the Xbox Series S. So they are full in on this console, and the price point is the reason why. I mean, it is a great console. I don't care what anybody says. You can argue until you're blue in the face, trying to make it look bad, like it's holding back the generation, like it's bad, all this type of stuff. There are far more positive cases and from games that have come out on the Xbox Series S than there are negative cases. And it is extremely cheap to get into AAA gaming, to get into playing the newest stuff. And it will continue to be a big seller for Xbox. I love my Xbox Series S. I do still use it all the time. It still gets games 60 frames per second, up to 120 frames per second. You plug it into a 1080p monitor, plug it into a 1440p monitor. For sub $300 console or a $300 console, the console is just a little beast. And we've even seen the more recent examples of games that are optimized properly on the Xbox Series S getting 60 frames per second. Games like Armored Core, which is a brand new game, and it's going to get that 60 frames per second on the Xbox Series S. And now we have a breaking story here with Baldur's Gate 3 and the Xbox Series S. We saw Phil Spencer there saying that there are different versions of these games on the X and the S, depending on some of the features that are there. And apparently now Larian has spoken with Phil Spencer, and they've come to the decision that the split screen co-op will not be featured on the Xbox Series S version of Baldur's Gate 3. Specifically, they say here, super happy to confirm that after meeting with Phil Spencer yesterday, we found a solution that allows us to bring Baldur's Gate 3 to Xbox players this year still, something we've been working towards for quite some time. All improvements will be there with split screen co-op on the Series X. Series S will not feature split screen co-op, but will also include cross-save progression between Steam and the Xbox Series. So there you have it. They came to the decision that rather than putting more resources, rather than taking more time to optimize split screen co-op for the Series S, which the reality of the situation is probably is going to be utilized by a small percentage, a small number of people who are actually going to be playing Baldur's Gate 3 on the Xbox Series S. They're just going to take that feature away and ship this game earlier than they were planning on, which would have been sometime in early 2024. So I mean, for me, for this type of game, I would have had no interest in split screen co-op, so I don't really care about it. It really comes down to a game by game basis when it comes to the split screen. Like the one game that I was annoyed about that they didn't put in the split screen co-op was Halo Infinite, because I was actually looking for that. I mean, Halo is one of my favorite franchises of all time, and I've played the split screen previously on the older games. So I was excited for it being there in Halo Infinite. That was really the only game that has upset me in recent memory without having split screen co-op, that where it was promised. Another game like Forza, where they are bringing split screen co-op later, I couldn't care less. I'll probably never use it. And then this, I would have never used it anyway. So there you have it. I'm actually happy this game is coming out earlier on Xbox, and that they are adjusting the way that they bring out these games to make sure that people aren't going to be missing out. So Baldur's Gate 3 should be coming out sometime before the end of the year, maybe even closer to the release date, when it will be coming out on the PlayStation 6, which is September 6th. So Series S, if you have one, don't worry. It looks like they aren't going to be going anywhere anytime soon, and it will continue to be supported. Now, when it comes to the current gen console prices, Phil Spencer is saying that the prices of these consoles won't be coming down like they used to be coming down. So he says this: the prices aren't coming down. We see it now. That's why we did the Xbox Series S. I know there's a bunch of questions like, what is it doing? We wanted to make sure that we had sub 300 console because we want to grow, and we think an entry level price point for any new families or players coming into the market is going to be important. And he goes on and says, for us, thinking about where our hardware is going and reaching more customers, price point is important, but you're not going to be able to start with consoles that's $500 thinking it's going to get to $200, which it makes sense. You usually don't see it's cut that much, going down $300, at least in recent memory. He says that won't happen because the core components that you're used to Moore's Law shooting up and to the right, but your components, you can't buy them anymore as a hardware maker because nobody's making that kind of RAM or other components. It's not the way it used to be, where you could take a spec and then ride it out for over 10 years and ride the price points down. It's why you see console prices relatively flat. So the price points for the Xbox looks like they really aren't going to be changing it too much. I mean, they did increase the Series X in certain parts of the world, which was unfortunate. And they did bring it up to match the PS5 in those other parts of the world, but we haven't seen them drop it at all. I have seen Series S prices fall. At least they were on sale from when it did launch. So that is something that has happened. But I think he's saying here, just overall, there won't be a general price cut where it's going to be the new price of the Series X and the Series S. But we also are seeing the PlayStation 5 prices drop in different times in different places. It says here, in fact, the price of the current gen consoles has increased since they launched in November 2020. Sony raised the prices by 12.5% in numerous countries last August, blaming high global inflation rates as well as adverse currency trends. And then he says over the last 2 months, however, Sony has introduced temporary PS5 price cuts. And that's the thing. We have seen temporary PS5 price cuts. And I think that's going to be more as to what goes on with this generation of consoles. We probably won't see an overall price cut that is the new price. We'll probably see these temporary ones that last for a couple of weeks and they go back up. And it's just probably to stimulate maybe a little bit of demand for the consoles, that when they do go back in price, people will still be buying them all the time. So Don't expect a major price cut, but hey, right now the price points for these consoles I still think are pretty decent, especially the Series S. You really can't go wrong, and the Series X is still a great console that relatively still cheap compared to building a PC. Now, it's not nearly as good as it was 2 years ago, but one of the things people always forget about the console space is that a lot of people just buy consoles because they're convenient. They're much cheaper than building a PC that can play big AAA games. That's why they go to them, and it's still hitting that, I would say, with both the Series X and the Xbox Series S. And then let's talk about this. The 360 store closing and backwards compatibility and all of that type of stuff. And he says that this here says that Phil Spencer loves to find solutions so games aren't lost when the 360 store closes. And I'm a big fan of game preservation, so very happy to hear him say that. He says there's a list of 220 games that are not back compat, and I have that list and I've got it stapled on my forehead. And like, how can we make sure you can play them still? And that is great to hear from Phil. Great to hear from a big company like Microsoft who knows that realistically these games going away, the 220 games, you look at that list, not many people are actually going to care. I'm one of those people that will care because I hate seeing games just disappear into the abyss. It's just the principle of it. If anybody wants to be able to play them, they should be able to some way be able to access these games. And a lot of these games that didn't even have physical copies, so they will be gone. Phil is actually interested in making sure that people can still play them. He says how many of those are on PC. That's one thing, because it doesn't necessarily mean you need to be able to play it on an existing hardware that you bought 15 years ago. But preservation is front and center when all these decisions are made. Awesome to hear that from Phil Spencer. He says, I will say for us, that preservation that's linked to only one piece of hardware is a challenge, because there can be hardware love as well. People who love and want this device to do this forever, but mechanical things will break over time. But that's why we gave people with this decision a year. Let's say, hey, if you want to go and buy things on the 360 store, we're going to give you a year head start and you can go and get those things. And just know the list of 220 games is something that we see, and we will love to find solutions for those games to continue to play. So let's really hope that that is the case, because we've seen multiple stores shut down. We've seen the closing of the PS3, or the announcement of the closing of the PS3 store, the Vita and the PSP digital stores. And there was tons of backlash against that. We saw the U-turn from Sony after that, saying that it was the wrong decision in planning to shut all three online marketplaces. And the PS3 and the Vita stores remained open, but the PSP store was closed as planned in July of 2021. So those stores, there's a lot of stuff in there that just disappear. The Wii U and the 3DS eShops were closing in March 2023, and clearly lots of criticism for that. And that resulted in 1,000 digital-only games, some of which were exclusive to these systems, being removed for good with no way to acquire them legally in the future. So this is the main reason why people emulate too, right? So these games can still be played. If you can't find them in any legal means, you're going to have to find a way to play them if you're interested in it. So there it is. And I'm happy that Phil Spencer is all for that preservation. Now, we also have him talking about mid-generation refresh. And he has this in an interview with IGN. And he says here, this is basically the gist of it. If you're wondering what's going on, will there be a mid-gen upgraded Xbox Series X? It looks like it won't be. There won't be a mid-gen coming from Xbox. It says, I think we need to let the devs settle on this hardware and get the most out of it. And that's basically what he's saying here, that he doesn't really think that there will be a mid-gen, more powerful Xbox Series X coming out this generation, which is an interesting take considering we're hearing about the PS5 Pro. And I feel maybe this is what he's saying now, but when the PS5 Pro, if or when it gets announced, it may change their tune a little bit depending on how much more powerful the PS5 Pro is. He says here, no, we're focused right now on the increased storage Xbox Series S, which is the 1 terabyte. May pick up that one day. He says, but no, like I said, we're kind of at the end of the beginning in my mind. So I think we need to let devs settle on this hardware and get the most out of it. It goes, but in terms of increased frame rate, increased resolution, I just look at what goes on PC with high-end GPUs and high-end CPUs. And it's not always just about pixel count or frame resolution. I think there's lighting techniques. There's a bunch of things that go into what makes a game look and feel great. And we have a ton of headroom as an industry there. And I do agree with that. The Series X, I know people left always still make fun of the tools, but the reality of the situation is there are still a lot of things and techniques that can be used to get better performance out of these games from the developers. And once they really get a grasp of that, we will start seeing performance changes on these consoles. I mean, there are many games where you don't see a lot of the RDNA 2 technology being used, the FSRs, all that type of stuff that is available on the Xbox. It seems like they aren't being used, at least. And I feel like once that starts happening, machine learning kicks in, we will potentially see better performance, steadier performances from more of these bigger games. The big question here is going to be Unreal Engine 5. How is that going to hold up over the long term on the current generation of consoles? So that was a ton of information there from Phil Spencer. We got some information from Starfield, but I will leave the video there, guys. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up. If you are new here, hit that subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.